My name is Mason Turner, a 32-year-old architect from Seattle. I was eagerly preparing for my brother Trevor's wedding, carefully wrapping his gift and packing my tailored suit. When I called my Aunt Patricia to confirm last-minute details, I cheerfully told her, "I can't wait for the ceremony tomorrow." There was a long pause before she replied, "Mason, the wedding was last week." My heart stopped as she sent photos showing my entire family celebrating without me. My brother and parents later laughed. "Didn't we tell you the date changed?" If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to see how this family drama unfolds. Growing up in the Turner household meant understanding the unspoken hierarchy early on. As the older brother, I quickly learned that being responsible didn't earn you favor, it simply became expected. While I was the one who helped Dad fix the leaking roof or assisted Mom with preparing holiday meals, Trevor was free to pursue whatever caught his interest that week. His spontaneity was celebrated as creativity. My reliability was taken for granted. Our childhood home in Portland had 4 bedrooms but somehow felt cramped with just the 4 of us. My parents, Richard and Diane, weren't cruel people, but they played favorites with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. When Trevor scored the winning goal in his high school soccer game, Dad bought him a car. When I graduated with honors from architecture school, I received a card that arrived 3 days late. "Trevor just needs more encouragement," Mom would explain when I occasionally pointed out the disparity. "You've always been so independent, Mason. You understand, right?" And I did understand, at least I thought I did. I rationalized their behavior as I grew older, telling myself that some people just needed more attention and support. Trevor struggled with direction, bouncing between college majors while I remained focused on my goals. When I received a prestigious scholarship to an architecture program across the country, I declined it to attend a state school closer to home. My parents never knew about the sacrifice, and when I mentioned it years later, Dad simply said, "Well, that was your choice, wasn't it?" Despite the lack of family support, I excelled in my career. After graduating, I secured a position at a well-respected firm in Seattle, eventually becoming one of their lead designers for sustainable commercial projects. My work has been featured in architectural magazines, and I've even won a regional award for innovative urban design. Did my family attend the award ceremony? No. Mom had a cold, Dad was busy with a work thing, and Trevor was between jobs again and just couldn't make it up there right now. The pattern continued throughout my 20s. My 30th birthday came and went without so much as a phone call until 3 days later when Mom texted, "Sorry we missed your birthday. Things have been hectic with Trevor's new business venture." The venture in question was a food truck concept that I had loaned Trevor $15,000 to start, money I had yet to see returned. Despite these slights, I maintained contact, visiting for holidays and calling weekly. When my parents mentioned they wanted to renovate their aging kitchen and master bathroom, I offered to help financially. After all, I was doing well. And that's what family does, right? I committed to paying for half of the $60,000 renovation, creating payment schedules and even connecting them with reputable contractors through my professional network. "This is very generous, Mason," Mom had said during that conversation. "But don't feel obligated. We know you're busy with your own life up in Seattle." That comment stung in its dismissiveness, as though my contribution was an afterthought rather than a significant financial commitment. Nevertheless, I arranged for monthly payments to the contractor and helped draft the initial designs. The renovation began 3 months ago, just as Trevor announced his engagement to Lisa, a dental hygienist he'd been dating for just under a year. The engagement shifted all attention to wedding preparations. When I called to discuss some details about the bathroom tile selection, Mom cut the conversation short because they were meeting with potential wedding venues. When I mentioned this pattern to my therapist, Dr. Sanders, she asked a question that made me uncomfortable. Do you feel your family values what you give more than who you are? I dismissed the question at the time, but it lingered. Every time I received a call from home that immediately turned to discussions of money or favors, the question echoed louder. Still, when Trevor asked me to be his best man during a rare brotherly phone call, I felt a surge of hope. Maybe things were changing. Maybe this wedding would be a turning point in our relationship. "You're my brother," Trevor had said. "Who else would I ask?" Those words meant everything to me, and I threw myself into best man duties with enthusiasm. I began planning a tasteful bachelor party, researched venues for the rehearsal dinner, and even started drafting my speech. For once, I felt included in something that mattered to my family. That feeling lasted exactly 26 days, until I received a text from Trevor. "Hey bro, might need to switch some wedding stuff around. Work's been crazy. We'll keep you posted." That was the last substantive communication I had about the wedding until that fateful call with Aunt Patricia. The original wedding planning process had begun with such promise. Trevor and Lisa had set a date for June 15th, a Saturday that I immediately marked in my calendar and built my work schedule around. I remember the exact moment Trevor told me the date because I was in the middle of a site visit for a new project. I stepped away from my clients to take his call, earning me a disapproving look from my project manager, but I didn't care. This was important family business. June 15th. Trevor had confirmed. "Lisa wants an early summer wedding before it gets too hot." I had immediately offered to help with venue recommendations, drawing on my architectural knowledge and connections. "I know several historic buildings in Portland that would be perfect," I told him. "Places with character that wouldn't require much decoration." Trevor had seemed genuinely appreciative. And for the next few weeks, I sent him links, made calls to venue managers I knew, and even drafted rough sketches of how certain spaces could be transformed for the ceremony and reception. I took a weekend off work to fly down to Portland and tour 3 potential venues with Trevor and Lisa. The Belmont Hall, an elegantly restored 1920s ballroom, was the clear winner. And I helped negotiate the rental fee down by offering to feature the venue in an architectural blog I occasionally contributed to. "This is amazing, Mason," Lisa had said, genuinely touched by my involvement. "You've saved us so much time and money." Beyond venue assistance, I had transferred $5,000 to Trevor for the initial venue deposit, assuring him it was my wedding gift to them. I had conversations with their chosen caterer about optimal floor plans for food service. I researched photographers and DJs, sending them curated lists with pros and cons for each. For a brief, shining moment, I felt truly valued for my contributions beyond just financial assistance. The text messages from that period tell the story of my gradual exclusion. In early March, the communications were frequent. Trevor, March 3rd. "Dude, Lisa loves the florist you recommended. Thanks." Trevor, March 10th. "Can you check out these 2 photographers and give your opinion?" Trevor, March 17th. "Mom wants to know if you can help with the seating chart since you're good with spatial stuff." By April, the messages had become less frequent and more vague. Trevor, April 5th. "Things are coming together. Might need to adjust some details." Trevor, April 14th. "Lisa's parents want to change some stuff. We'll update you soon." May brought even fewer communications, and the ones that did come through were clearly holding information back. Trevor, May 2nd. "Wedding plans evolving. Don't worry about the bachelor party for now." Trevor, May 12th. "Lots of changes happening. We'll fill you in later." The last message I received specifically about the wedding was on May 20th. Trevor. "Hey bro, might need to switch some wedding stuff around. Work's been crazy. We'll keep you posted." What I didn't know at the time was that I was being systematically removed from the wedding planning and, ultimately, the wedding itself. During this period, I was assigned to oversee a major commercial project in Chicago, requiring me to spend 3 weeks on site in late May and early June. I made sure to schedule my return for June 13th. giving me plenty of time to fulfill my best man duties for the June 15th wedding. The project in Chicago was demanding, involving long days and complex problem solving. I was so focused on ensuring I could complete everything in time to return for the wedding that I missed the warning signs. Looking back now, there were clues. Mom mentioning changes to the plans. When I called to discuss the ongoing home renovation, Lisa not responding to my text about the bachelor party arrangements. Cousin Matt asking me about the new wedding date during a brief call about an unrelated family matter, then quickly changing the subject when I expressed confusion. I had even called Trevor directly on June 1st to confirm final details for the bachelor party I was planning for the weekend before the wedding. The call went to voicemail, and Trevor texted back hours later. Super swamped right now. Let's talk next week. I had attributed all of this to pre-wedding stress and continued with my work in Chicago, focused on wrapping things up so I could be fully present for my brother's big day. I even arranged for one of my colleagues to take over the final inspection so I could catch an earlier flight home on June 12th. The night before I was set to fly back to Seattle, I received an email from the airline confirming my flight details. I decided to call Aunt Patricia, who lived closest to my parents and was always in the loop on family matters, to confirm the rehearsal dinner details for that Friday night. That's when my world came crashing down. The phone rang 3 times before Aunt Patricia answered with her characteristic cheerful, "Hello, dear." I was in my Chicago hotel room, surrounded by half-packed bags as I prepared for my morning flight. "Hi, Aunt Patricia," I said, balancing the phone between my ear and shoulder while folding my dress shirts. "Just wanted to check about tomorrow's rehearsal dinner. Is it still at 7 at Riverside Terrace? I'm flying back to Seattle in the morning and then heading down to Portland on Friday." The silence that followed lasted just long enough for me to stop packing and focus on the call. "Mason," she finally said, her voice dropping to a gentler tone that immediately sent warning signals through my body. "What are you talking about?" "Trevor's rehearsal dinner," I replied, a knot forming in my stomach. "For the wedding on Saturday." Another pause, longer this time. "Oh, Mason," she said, and I could hear the mixture of confusion and pity in her voice. "Trevor's wedding was last Saturday. On the 8th. Didn't you know?" I sat down heavily on the edge of the hotel bed, my legs suddenly unable to support me. "That's not possible," I said, hearing the strain in my voice. "The wedding is this Saturday, the 15th. I'm the best man." "Mason, I don't know what to tell you," Aunt Patricia continued. "The wedding was definitely last weekend, the 8th. Everyone was there." She paused before adding the devastating detail. "Brian was the best man. Trevor's college roommate." My mind raced through possibilities. This was a miscommunication, a joke. A mistake. It had to be. "That doesn't make any sense," I insisted. "I've been involved in all the planning. I helped pick the venue. I'm supposed to give a speech." "Hold on," Aunt Patricia said. "Let me send you something." Seconds later, my phone pinged with an incoming message. With shaking hands, I pulled the phone from my ear and tapped on the notification. The screen filled with a photo of my family gathered around Trevor and Lisa, all dressed in wedding attire, beaming at the camera. My father, looking distinguished in a charcoal suit. My mother. I put the phone back to my ear, my chest tight with a sensation I couldn't quite name, somewhere between rage and heartbreak. "There must be some mistake," I managed to say. "I'm sorry, Mason," Aunt Patricia replied, but her tone had shifted from sympathy to something harder. "But you know how you are. Always so busy with your important job in Seattle. Trevor said they tried to tell you about the date change, but you were wrapped up in some big project. He said you've barely been in touch these last few months." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "That's not true," I protested. "I've been sending ideas, helping with planning. I even gave them money for the venue deposit." "Well," she said. her voice now taking on that familiar family tone of dismissal. "You've always been a bit removed from family matters. Flying in for a few hours at Christmas, and then rushing back to your life. Some of us are here year-round, dealing with family stuff." The implication was clear. My absence justified my exclusion. The fact that I lived in another city for my career somehow made me less entitled to basic consideration. I ended the call with a mumbled excuse, promising to call back, knowing I wouldn't. At least not to Aunt Patricia. Instead, I immediately called Trevor. The call went straight to voicemail, as I somehow knew it would. I sent a text that took 3 attempts to write without expletives. "Just found out your wedding was last week. Please call me." Next, I tried my parents' number. Mom answered on the 4th ring. "Mason! How's Chicago? Getting your important building finished?" Her voice was cheerful, with no indication that anything was amiss. "Mom," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Trevor got married last weekend?" "Oh," she said, and I heard the false surprise in her voice. "Yes, didn't he tell you?" The date had to change because Lisa's grandmother could only come on the 8th. I thought Trevor told everyone. "He didn't tell me," I said flatly. "No one told me." "Well, you've been so busy with your work trip. Trevor said he tried to reach you but couldn't get through." My phone records would later confirm that no calls from Trevor had come through during my time in Chicago, not even attempted ones. No voicemails, no missed calls. No texts mentioning a date change. Nothing. "Put Dad on the phone," I requested, my voice now icy calm. I heard shuffling, then my father's gruff voice. "Mason? What's going on? Did you know that I wasn't informed about Trevor's wedding date changing?" A pause, then a small chuckle that felt like acid in my ears. "These things happen, son. Communication breakdown. Trevor said he told you, but you know how scatterbrained he can be. Didn't we tell you? I could have sworn your mother mentioned it during one of your calls." "She didn't," I said. "No one did." "Well," he continued unperturbed, "it was a beautiful ceremony. Small, intimate. Just family and close friends. Just family." The words echoed in my head. Just family. Which apparently didn't include me. "I'm the best man," I said, hearing how pathetic it sounded even as the words left my mouth. "I was supposed to be the best man." "Ah, well." With the date change and your work commitments, Trevor asked Brian to step in. "No hard feelings, right? These things happen. These things happen." As if being excluded from my only brother's wedding was as inconsequential as a missed dinner reservation. "I need to go," I said, and hung up before they could respond. Later that night, after hours of pacing my hotel room and ignoring calls from both parents, I received a text from Trevor. "Sorry about the confusion, bro. Date changed last minute, and you were busy with your big project. Tried to reach you, but you know how it is. No hard feelings? No hard feelings." As if the complete erasure of my role in his wedding could be dismissed with a casual text. As if the weeks of planning and thousands of dollars I'd contributed meant nothing. As if my exclusion from one of the most significant family events was a simple misunderstanding rather than a deliberate act. That night, I scrolled through the wedding photos that family members had begun posting on social media. Photo after photo showed joyous celebrations, tender moments, and family bonds, all without me. In one particularly painful image, Trevor stood with Brian, our parents, and Lisa's family, all raising glasses in a toast. The caption read, "Surrounded by everyone who matters most." Everyone who matters most. And I wasn't there. The flight back to Seattle the next morning was a blur. I upgraded to first class. Not as a treat, but because I couldn't bear the thought of breaking down in front of a plane full of strangers. The privacy of a window seat in the front cabin gave me space to stare silently out at the clouds, occasionally accepting a whiskey from flight attendants who seemed to sense I wasn't in the mood for conversation. By the time I arrived at my apartment, I felt hollowed out. The space that usually felt like a sanctuary now seemed to mock me with its emptiness. The wedding gift I had purchased for Trevor and Lisa, an expensive handcrafted crystal decanter set, sat wrapped on my dining table where I'd left it, waiting for a celebration I would never attend. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, sending a brief email to my supervisor explaining I had a family emergency. The irony wasn't lost on me. A family emergency indeed, just not the kind anyone would recognize or validate. For 3 days, I barely left my apartment. I ordered delivery food that I hardly touched, ignored calls from my parents, and stared at the ceiling for hours. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by dreams where I arrived at venues for events that had already ended, everyone always already gone. On the 4th day, my best friend Michael let himself in with the spare key I'd given him years ago. He found me unshaven, unwashed, surrounded by takeout containers. "Jesus, Mason," he said, surveying the scene. "What happened to you?" I told him everything. The wedding date change. The deliberate exclusion. The casual dismissal of my feelings afterward. As I spoke, Michael's expression shifted from concern to outrage. "That's fucked up," he said when I finished. "That's beyond fucked up. That's calculated cruelty." Hearing someone else validate my feelings broke something loose inside me. For the first time since the revelation, I cried deep, ugly sobs that left me gasping for air. Michael sat with me through it, not offering empty platitudes or solutions, just bearing witness to my pain. When the storm had passed, he stood up and opened my curtains, letting in light that made me wince. "Shower," he commanded. "Then we're going out for actual food. Then we're making a plan." Michael's no-nonsense approach was exactly what I needed. After cleaning up and changing into fresh clothes, we went to a small bistro where he made sure I ate a proper meal. Over coffee, he helped me process what had happened. "This isn't a one-time thing," he pointed out. "This is a pattern that's been going on your entire life. The difference is that this time, they went so far that you can't rationalize it away." He was right. I had spent decades making excuses for my family's behavior, constructing elaborate explanations that protected them while invalidating my own feelings. The wedding exclusion was simply too egregious to explain away. The following week, I returned to work, throwing myself into projects with an intensity that concerned even my most ambitious colleagues. I stayed late every night, took on additional responsibilities, and volunteered for weekend site visits. If I kept moving, I reasoned, I wouldn't have time to feel the emptiness inside me. My supervisor, Natalie, called me into her office after I had snapped at a junior architect for a minor error. "This isn't like you, Mason," she said, her expression concerned. "You're one of the most patient mentors on the team. What's going on?" I gave her a sanitized version of events, expecting professional courtesy but not much more. Instead, she shared her own story of family estrangement and recommended her therapist, Dr. Keller, who specialized in family trauma. "Take some time if you need it," she added. "Your projects will be here when you get back." I didn't take time off, but I did call Dr. Keller. Our first session was uncomfortable as I struggled to articulate the complex web of family dynamics without sounding like a victim. "You keep qualifying your pain," Dr. Keller observed. "Every time you describe something hurtful your family has done, you immediately follow it with a justification for their behavior. Isn't that what maturity is?" I asked. "Understanding other people's perspectives? Understanding perspectives is healthy," she agreed. "Systematically invalidating your own feelings to protect people who hurt you is not." Over the next several sessions, we explored the pattern of emotional neglect that had characterized my family relationships. Dr. Keller helped me recognize that my family's behavior wasn't just thoughtless but actively harmful, and that my continued financial and emotional support was enabling the dysfunction. "What would happen?" she asked during our fourth session, "if you stopped being the responsible one?" If you stopped providing financial support and emotional labor without receiving anything in return? The question terrified me. My identity had been built around being the dependable one, the successful one who didn't need validation or attention. What would be left of me if I removed that foundation? As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text from my mother. Contractor needs next payment for bathroom. Can you send by Friday? No. How are you? No acknowledgement of the wedding situation. Just another financial demand. I showed the text to Dr. Keller. Perfect timing, she said. What do you want to do about this? For the first time, I considered not immediately complying with my family's expectations. The thought was both frightening and strangely liberating. I don't know, I admitted. But I think I need some time to figure it out. That evening, I didn't respond to my mother's text. Instead, I called Michael and accepted an invitation to join him and his husband for dinner at their home. Something I had frequently declined in the past because I was too busy with work or family obligations. As we shared a meal and genuine conversation, I felt a glimmer of what family could and should be. People who see you, who make space for you, who value your presence not for what you can provide but simply because you matter to them. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. The path forward wasn't clear yet, but I knew I couldn't go back to the way things had been. Something had to change, and for once, it wouldn't be me contorting myself to fit into my family's narrative. They would need to accommodate me, or we would need to redefine our relationship entirely. The renovation payment deadline came and went. I didn't send the money, and I didn't explain why. Let them wonder, let them worry. For once, I would not be rushing to smooth things over, to make everything easy for everyone but myself. I was done being the family doormat. The home renovation project had begun as many things in my family did, with a casual mention that quickly became my responsibility. During a phone call in January, Mom had mentioned that their kitchen was showing its age, and the master bathroom was practically falling apart. What followed was a 20-minute description of leaking faucets, outdated appliances, and cracked tiles. It's just so expensive to fix everything, she had sighed. Contractors want a fortune these days. I recognized the familiar pattern. The problem presentation followed by the implied request. Rather than waiting for them to directly ask, I had volunteered to help, as I always did. I could contribute to the renovation, I offered. I'm doing well at the firm, and I have some savings set aside. My mother's tone immediately brightened. Oh, Mason, that would be wonderful. But only if you're sure. We don't want to burden you. The statement was disingenuous at best. If they didn't want to burden me, they wouldn't have spent 20 minutes detailing the problems. Nevertheless, I committed to paying half of the estimated $60,000 renovation, which would include a complete kitchen remodel and master bathroom renovation. Within days, I had researched contractors in Portland, consulted with colleagues about reasonable rates, and drafted preliminary design ideas based on my architectural expertise. I created a payment schedule that would distribute the $30,000 contribution over 6 months, making it manageable with my salary and savings. When I sent the designs and financial plan to my parents, my father called, sounding more enthusiastic than he had in years. This looks really professional, son, he said. The pride in his voice both unfamiliar and intoxicating. You've really thought of everything. That momentary approval had been enough to cement my commitment. I arranged for the first payment to be sent directly to Hammond Construction, the company we had selected together, and the work began in March. During my rare visits to Portland, I would inspect the progress, making suggestions about materials and finishes that would maximize both aesthetics and property value. The contractor, Jeff Hammond, often commented on my expertise. Wish all my clients had an architect in the family, he'd said during one visit. Makes communication so much easier. My parents seemed to appreciate my input during these visits. even if they occasionally dismissed my suggestions in favor of more traditional choices. I didn't mind the creative disagreements. They were normal parts of any renovation. What bothered me was how quickly my contributions became expected rather than appreciated. "Mason will cover that upgrade," my mother told Jeff when discussing higher-end kitchen appliances, without consulting me first. "Mason can figure out the backsplash issue," my father declared when a design problem arose, even though I was in Seattle managing my own projects. 3 payments into the renovation schedule, Trevor had announced his engagement. And suddenly the kitchen cabinets that had been absolutely urgent were less important than wedding cake tastings and venue tours. Still, I continued sending monthly payments to Hammond Construction, even as my involvement in the design decisions waned. After the wedding revelation, I missed the 4th payment deadline. 3 days later, my phone rang with my father's number. I let it go to voicemail. "Mason, there seems to be an issue with the contractor payment. Jeff Hammond called saying he hasn't received this month's installment. Give us a call back when you can." No mention of the wedding. No acknowledgement of my exclusion from the most significant family event in years. Just a business call about money. I didn't return the call. 2 days later, my mother tried. "Mason, sweetie, hope everything's okay with you. We're a bit concerned about the renovation payment. The contractors are saying they'll have to pause work without it. Call me back." "Okay?" Again, no mention of the elephant in the room. No apology, no explanation, not even a recognition that something significant had happened. Just the assumption that the money would continue flowing regardless of how I was treated. A week after the missed payment, both parents began calling multiple times daily. I silenced my phone and focused on work, on therapy, on rebuilding my sense of self outside of my role as family provider. Finally, nearly 2 weeks after the missed payment, I received a text from Trevor. "Dude, what's going on with the Reno money? Mom and Dad are freaking out. The contractors stopped work and are threatening to put a lien on the house. I know you're probably still upset about the wedding miscommunication, but don't take it out on them." Wedding miscommunication. As if forgetting to invite your brother and supposed best man was equivalent to a mixed-up dinner reservation. I didn't respond to Trevor either. Instead, I consulted with a lawyer about my financial obligations. Since I had no formal contract with my parents or the construction company, merely a verbal agreement, I wasn't legally bound to continue payments. The lawyer advised documenting any further communication in case the situation escalated. 3 weeks after the missed payment, the calls from my parents became less frequent but more desperate in tone. My mother's voicemails turned tearful. "Mason, please call us back. We don't understand why you're doing this. The house is torn apart, and we can't afford to finish the work without your help. Whatever is wrong, we can fix it if you just talk to us." My father's messages grew increasingly irritated. "This silent treatment is childish, Mason. You made a commitment to this renovation. Your mother is upset, the house is unlivable, and you're ignoring our calls like a teenager. I expected more maturity from you." The irony of being accused of immaturity by the people who had excluded me from my brother's wedding without so much as a conversation was not lost on me. Finally, exactly 1 month after I discovered the wedding deception, both my parents called simultaneously from separate phones. A tactic they had used during my college years when I was being particularly unresponsive. This time I answered. "Hello?" I said, my voice neutral despite the hammering of my heart. "Mason," my mother began, relief evident in her voice. Finally. "We've been so worried. About the money," I clarified. "Not about me." A pause, then my father's voice. Speakerphone evident in the slight echo. "Now, Mason, that's not fair. Of course we've been concerned about you. But you have to admit." Disappearing without a word and cutting off the renovation funds without notice is concerning behavior. Concerning behavior. I repeated slowly. Like excluding your son from his brother's wedding and then pretending it was a miscommunication? Another pause, longer this time. Mason, my mother said carefully. We've already explained about the wedding. The date changed suddenly, and with your work schedule, we assumed you couldn't make it. It was unfortunate, but these things happen. These things don't just happen, I replied, my calm surprising even me. They are choices made by people who should care about each other. Look, my father interjected, impatience creeping into his tone. What's done is done. We can discuss the wedding situation later if you insist. But right now we have contractors threatening legal action and a house that's half demolished. We need to know if you're going to fulfill your commitment to the renovation. My commitment. As if I were the one who had broken promises and violated trust. In that moment, I realized with perfect clarity that nothing would change unless I forced it to change. My family would continue taking me for granted, extracting resources while giving nothing in return, unless I established boundaries they couldn't ignore. I need to think about it, I said finally. I'll let you know my decision by the end of the week. Before they could protest, I ended the call and blocked both numbers temporarily. I needed space to make my decision without emotional manipulation. That evening, I sat on my balcony overlooking the Seattle skyline, reflecting on Dr. Keller's question. What would happen if I stopped being the responsible one? The answer was becoming clearer. My family would either recognize my worth and begin treating me with basic respect, or they would reveal that my only value to them was financial and practical support. Either way, I would have my answer. And for the first time in my life, I was prepared to act on it. Whatever the consequences might be. The decision crystallized over the next few days. After consulting with Dr. Keller and reviewing my financial situation with my accountant, I determined that I could afford to write off the payments I'd already made toward the renovation, but I would not be continuing the funding. This wasn't about the money itself but about what it represented, the one-sided nature of my family relationships. I drafted several potential responses, ranging from lengthy explanations of my feelings to terse statements of withdrawal. None felt right. They either revealed too much vulnerability to people who had shown they couldn't be trusted with it, or they came across as petty and reactive. The breakthrough came during a dinner with Michael and his husband, Ryan. As I explained my dilemma, Ryan, who had been quietly listening, suddenly laughed. Sorry, he said, noticing my confusion. It's just, the solution seems so obvious. They excluded you from a major family event and then pretended it was a simple miscommunication, right? And their exact words were, "Didn't we tell you?" I nodded, still not seeing his point. So when they call about the money, just say, "Didn't I tell you I wasn't continuing the payments?" Same energy. Let them feel what it's like to be on the receiving end of that gaslighting. The simplicity and poetic justice of it struck me immediately. Using their own dismissive tactics would communicate more effectively than any lengthy explanation ever could. I unblocked my parents' numbers that evening and waited. The call came the next morning. My father's number lighting up my phone screen precisely at 9, always the early riser. I answered on the third ring, determined to maintain control of the conversation. "Mason speaking," I said, using my professional tone. "Mason," my father began without preamble. "It's been nearly a week. We need an answer about the renovation payments. The contractors are threatening to put a lien on the house, and your mother is beside herself with worry." I took a deep breath, centered myself, and channeled the casual dismissiveness they had perfected over decades. "About the payments," I said, keeping my voice light. "Didn't I tell you I wouldn't be continuing them?" The silence that followed was so complete I briefly wondered if the call had dropped. "What?" my father finally managed, genuine shock in his voice. "The payments," I repeated calmly. "I thought I mentioned I wouldn't be making them anymore. Must have been a miscommunication." Another long pause, then my father's voice, tight with controlled anger. "No, Mason, you did not tell us." "This is the first we're hearing of it, and it's completely unacceptable. You made a commitment. I mused. That's strange. I could have sworn I told you. Well, these things happen, right? Miscommunications are unfortunately common in families. The deliberate echo of their own words about the wedding was not lost on my father. His breathing became audible through the phone. This is about the wedding, he said flatly. You're punishing us over a simple date change. I'm not punishing anyone, I replied, maintaining my calm. I'm simply prioritizing my financial commitments, and unfortunately, the renovation no longer fits into my budget. I assumed you knew. Didn't I tell you? Stop saying that, my father snapped, his composure finally breaking. You know damn well you didn't tell us anything. We have a half-finished house and contractors threatening legal action because you decided to play games. I'm not playing games, I said, my voice cooling several degrees. I'm experiencing a communication breakdown with family members who don't value my presence enough to include me in significant events. It's unfortunate, but as you've recently demonstrated, these things happen. Put your mother on the phone, he demanded, clearly hoping she would have better luck. I heard shuffling, then my mother's tearful voice. Mason, sweetie. I don't understand what's happening. We need your help with the renovation. We can't afford to finish it without you. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, genuine but firm. Perhaps you should have considered the importance of our relationship before excluding me from Trevor's wedding. But that was just a misunderstanding, she protested. We thought Trevor told you about the date change. And I thought I told you about the payment change, I countered. Seems like our family has a communication problem. This isn't fair, Mason, she said, her voice hardening slightly beneath the tears. You're comparing apples and oranges. The wedding was one day. This renovation is our home. And the wedding was my only brother's marriage, a once-in-a-lifetime event I can never get back, I replied. You made a choice to exclude me from family then. I'm making a choice about my financial priorities now. So that's it. My father's voice returned, having apparently taken the phone back. You're just backing out of your commitment because you're angry about the wedding? I'm reevaluating all my commitments based on recent revelations about family priorities, I corrected him. The renovation funding is just one aspect of that reevaluation. This is extortion, he accused. You're holding the renovation hostage until we what? Apologize? Throw another wedding so you can attend? I'm not holding anything hostage, I said evenly. I'm simply informing you that my financial situation has changed, and I won't be continuing the payments. What you do with that information is entirely up to you. You can't just change your mind about a financial commitment, he exploded. We've made decisions based on your promised contribution. Didn't we tell you that all financial arrangements were subject to change? I asked, the final twist of the knife. I could have sworn we discussed that possibility. Before he could respond, I continued, my voice now deadly serious. You excluded me from Trevor's wedding, an event where I was supposed to be the best man, and then gaslit me about it. You've taken my financial and emotional support for granted for years while giving nothing in return. That arrangement is now over. I won't be continuing the renovation payments. And I won't be available for any further discussion about it. I ended the call before they could respond, a sense of calm purpose washing over me. For the first time in my adult life, I had established a boundary with my family and held firm, regardless of the emotional manipulation tactics they deployed. Within hours, Trevor called, his voice tight with anger. What the hell? Mason? Mom and Dad are freaking out about the renovation. Dad says you're backing out because you're pissed about missing the wedding. That's one interpretation, I replied coolly. Look, I'm sorry about the wedding miscommunication, okay? But taking it out on Mom and Dad by leaving them with a torn-up house is seriously messed up. Interesting that you see it that way, I said. From my perspective, excluding your brother from your wedding and then pretending it was a miscommunication is what's seriously messed up. It wasn't like that, Trevor protested. The date changed last minute because of Lisa's grandmother's health, and everything was chaotic. We tried to reach you. No, Trevor, you didn't, I said with certainty. There isn't a single call, text, or email from you mentioning a date change. Not one. His silence confirmed what I already knew. You know what's most telling? I continued. Neither you nor Mom and Dad have actually apologized. Not once. You've explained, justified, and minimized, but not one of you has said I'm sorry we hurt you. Fine, I'm sorry, Trevor said, the insincerity evident in his tone. Now will you please help Mom and Dad with the renovation? No, I said simply. That arrangement is over. So what, you're just done with the family now? Over one mistake? This wasn't one mistake, Trevor. This was the final example of a lifetime pattern. And I'm not done with family, I'm just redefining what family means to me. True family doesn't exclude, manipulate, or take advantage of each other. That's really self-righteous coming from the guy who's leaving our parents with a half-demolished house. Trevor snapped. They have options, I replied. They can take out a loan, scale back the renovation, or sell some assets. What they can't do is continue treating me like an ATM while excluding me from the family. After Trevor's call, I received texts and calls from various extended family members, each apparently recruited to pressure me into changing my mind. I responded to each with the same message. I understand you're concerned about the renovation situation. This is a private matter between my parents and me. I appreciate your concern, but my decision is final. By standing firm through this barrage, I discovered something important. The world didn't end when I said no to my family. They were upset, yes, but I survived their disappointment and anger. For the first time, I was prioritizing my own well-being over their demands, and though uncomfortable, it was also incredibly liberating. A week after the confrontation call, my mother sent a text that simply read, "We found a way to finish the renovation on our own. I hope you're happy." I didn't respond. Their financial solutions were no longer my concern. What mattered was that I had finally broken the cycle of giving endlessly while receiving nothing in return. The renovation situation had provided the perfect opportunity to establish this boundary in terms they couldn't ignore or minimize. Dr. Keller called it a beautiful symmetry. They excluded you from something important, and then gaslit you about it. She observed during our next session. You've now excluded them from something important to them, and used their own words to explain it. Sometimes people can only understand boundaries when they experience the consequences of violating them. As the weeks passed, the initial flood of angry calls and texts diminished to a trickle, then stopped entirely. The silence was both peaceful and painful, a necessary space for healing but also a reminder of what had been lost, or perhaps had never truly existed. 1 month after my boundary-setting phone call, I found myself standing in my kitchen on a Sunday morning, sunlight streaming through the windows, realizing I had no obligations for the day. No family calls to return, no financial fires to extinguish, no emotional labor to perform for people who wouldn't appreciate it. The freedom was dizzying. I called Michael and spontaneously invited him and Ryan for brunch, something I would never have done in my previous life of carefully scheduled obligations. They accepted immediately. And within hours my apartment was filled with conversation, laughter, and genuine warmth. "You seem different," Ryan observed as we cleared dishes afterward. "More present." "I feel different," I admitted. Like I've put down a heavy backpack I didn't even realize I was carrying. The metaphor was apartment. Without the constant weight of my family's expectations and demands, I discovered energy and time I never knew I had. I joined a local architectural preservation society, something I'd been interested in for years but had never found the time for. I accepted dinner invitations from colleagues, forming friendships that had previously been limited to professional courtesy. Dr. Keller encouraged these developments. "You're building your chosen family," she explained during one session. "The people who appreciate you for who you are, not what you can provide." As my social circle expanded, I realized how isolated I had been, tethered to a family system that took more than it gave. My new connections were reciprocal, with mutual respect and genuine interest flowing in both directions. The silence from my biological family continued for nearly 2 months. Then, on my birthday, I received a text from my mother. "Happy birthday, Mason. We miss you." Simple, but notable for what it didn't contain. No requests, no guilt trips, no expectations. Just an acknowledgement and an expression of feeling. I waited a day before responding. "Thank you for the birthday wishes." Brief, civil, but not inviting further engagement. I wasn't ready yet. 2 weeks later, Trevor texted. "Lisa's pregnant. You're going to be an uncle in January." This news stirred complicated feelings. Joy at the prospect of a niece or nephew. Sadness at the distance that might prevent me from being part of the child's life. Anger that Trevor seemed to assume this announcement would automatically reset our relationship. After consulting with Dr. Keller, I responded, "Congratulations to you both. Wishing Lisa a healthy pregnancy." Again, polite but bounded. The next significant contact came 3 months after the renovation confrontation. My father called on a Tuesday evening. After considerable thought, I answered. "Mason," he said, his voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. "How are you?" "I'm well," I replied neutrally. "What can I do for you?" "Nothing," he said, surprising me. "I'm not calling to ask for anything. I've been doing some thinking, and well, I may have been wrong about some things." Coming from my father, this was unprecedented. I remained silent, giving him space to continue. "The renovation is finished," he said. "We downsized some of the plans and took out a small home equity loan. It wasn't easy, but we managed." "I'm glad to hear that," I said, genuinely relieved that the situation had resolved without my intervention. "The thing is," he continued, "having to figure it out ourselves made me realize how much we've relied on you over the years. Not just financially, but for everything. And I'm not sure we've been appropriately appreciative." The understatement might have made me laugh if it weren't so painful. "I appreciate you saying that," I said carefully. "About the wedding," he continued, clearly uncomfortable but pressing on. "You were right. We knew the date had changed, and we didn't make sure you were informed. Trevor was worried you wouldn't approve of the rush ceremony, and honestly, it was easier not to deal with the logistics of changing your role in the wedding party." The honesty was both refreshing and wounding. "Thank you for acknowledging that," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not asking for anything," he emphasized. "I just wanted you to know that I understand why you were hurt, and I'm sorry for my part in it." An actual apology. Perhaps the first genuine one I'd ever received from my father. "That means a lot to me," I said truthfully. We spoke for a few more minutes about neutral topics before ending the call. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a first step toward a potentially healthier relationship. One based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. Over the following months, contact with my family resumed gradually, but with noticeable differences. My mother called occasionally, asking about my life and work without immediately pivoting to family demands. Trevor sent ultrasound pictures with no accompanying requests or guilt trips. My father even emailed an article about sustainable architecture he thought might interest me. A small but meaningful acknowledgement of my professional passion. I maintained my boundaries carefully, engaging when it felt healthy and stepping back when old patterns emerged. Sometimes this meant declining invitations or ending calls that veered into familiar territory. Other times it meant accepting small overtures of connection with cautious optimism. 6 months after the confrontation call, I accepted an invitation to dinner at my parents' home to see the completed renovation and celebrate Trevor and Lisa's baby news. The visit was tense at times but ultimately productive. The renovated spaces looked beautiful, if somewhat scaled back from the original plans. More importantly, my family seemed to be making genuine efforts to relate to me as a person rather than a resource. As I built this new, more balanced relationship with my biological family, I continued nurturing my chosen family as well. Michael and Ryan became fixtures in my life, along with new friends from the Preservation Society and work. I even began dating again after years of claiming I was too busy for a relationship. My 33rd birthday arrived with a small gathering at my apartment, something I would never have considered in the past. As I looked around at the mix of friends and family who had come to celebrate, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The journey wasn't complete, and there would certainly be challenges ahead, but I had fundamentally changed the trajectory of my relationships and my life. The most profound change wasn't external but internal. I no longer measured my worth by what I could provide to others or how much I could endure without complaint. I had learned to value myself enough to expect reciprocity and respect, and to walk away when they weren't forthcoming. Dr. Keller called it reclaiming your personal power. But I thought of it more simply. I had finally recognized that I deserved to be more than an afterthought in my own life. As I reflect on this journey, I'm reminded that true family, whether biological or chosen, sees you, values you, and makes space for you not because of what you can provide but because of who you are. Building relationships on this foundation requires courage, boundaries, and sometimes difficult confrontations, but the freedom and authenticity on the other side are worth every uncomfortable moment. So if you're watching this and recognize yourself in my story, know that you're not alone. Your feelings are valid, your boundaries are necessary. And your worth is not determined by how much you give or how little you ask for in return. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to say, enough, and mean it. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? What helped you through that process? Please like, subscribe, and share this video if it resonated with you. Your support helps this channel reach others who might need to hear that they're not alone in these struggles. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, building a life filled with genuine connection starts with valuing yourself enough to expect it.